Hello and welcome. I'm Claire Duff and I'm leader of the Irish Baroque Orchestra. I'm delighted to say that today I'm interviewing the world-class Baroque violinist Rachel Podger. Rachel Podger has established herself as a leading interpreter of the Baroque and classical music periods. She was the first woman to be awarded the prestigious Royal Academy of Music Cohen Foundation Bach Prize in 2015 and Gramophone Artist of the Year 2018. Rachel has an extensive discography and is the founder and artistic director of Brecon Baroque Festival and her ensemble, Brecon Baroque. Hello and welcome, Rachel, and thank you so much for agreeing to do this interview.
Oh, thanks very much for having me. It's great to be here. Well, I mean, I know I'm at home, but here, virtually here with you and
together. We were, of course, meant to have played together last month for the Irish Baroque Orchestra Bach concerts. I was really looking forward to playing the Bach double and triple concertos with you, so I'm a bit gutted that was cancelled because of COVID-19.
Same here. Me too. Yeah.
But, hopefully we'll get to play them together in 2022.
Yes. There's a plan which seems so far away, but it's not going to be. It's just going to be like suddenly we'll be there.
So now to my first question. Why do you play the Baroque violin? A very basic question.
Yes, well, I love the sound of the Baroque violin. I love the way you can. I love the sound of gut strings. Basically, I love the fact that they are all different from each other. I always like to think of the gut strings as though you're having, treating 4 different children. So they're equally important, and you love them all equally. But some of them need more of a firm handling than others.
Brilliant.
Some need a bit more freedom. Like the E string, if you control that too much, it starts going. And similarly on the D string, for instance, if you don't have a firm hand, then it's not going to speak. So I love that. I love the individuality of the strings, how they speak so differently. I love the fact that you actually get to speak with kind of, well, if you imagine certain words while you're playing, you can actually make that happen with all the different shapes that you can do with the bow. I love the fact that you can do shapes. Not that you can't on a modern violin, but it's a very different animal, isn't it? Because it's much more about sustaining and having equal strokes. I love the fact that there's inequality, which is very un-PC, but not when you get to the Baroque violin.
Yes, exactly. Yeah.
And I just also love the sense of freedom that you have. The fact that you don't have all the scaffolding going on here. You don't have a chin rest and you don't have your shoulder rest. Mind you, some people do need to have some kind of support, and I do have. I have kind of carpet underlay that I stick under my shirt, and then sometimes it gets a bit sticky in hot weather. But and then I've got kind of chamois leather and things like that, and everyone has different solutions, don't they? Some people have demister, car demister pads that they put there. But it's good to have some kind of support, and I think everyone's slightly different, also depending on your physique and how long your neck is and what you're used to doing. I mean, some people who come from the modern violin who don't play without, who play without a shoulder rest already, for them it's not such a huge adjustment to make. And then of course there's lots of different ways of playing anyway. There's the kind of chin off way of playing where that's not really an issue, where you're trying to be as far away from the fiddle anyway. And then there's the more kind of chin on, there's a kind of hybrid, and also if you're holding it more kind of inwards or outwards, or lots of different ways of doing it. And I love that fact. It can be quite confusing, I think, if you're starting out, because of course when we learn something, it's quite nice to have a rule book, and so that we know where we are and what we need to learn next, like with learning anything. But after a while you then kind of find your own way of doing it, and then you establish what works for you and what still works, of course, for the expression of the music. Yeah, so that's a very long answer, really, but that's why I love the violin, because you have this physical freedom, you have a lot of musical freedom once you are familiar with the various languages of the national styles, and there's a lot of freedom that you have, partly because there's not so much notated on the page, of course, you know, in all areas, dynamics, articulation, lots of performance practice things are just understood as part of the language, and the grammar of the language, and that there are lots of rules in that, but at the same time you do have quite a lot of freedom.
Yes.
Like you just would when you know, when we're talking now, you know, everyone is has their own kind of individual style. Even, you know, how we gesticulate. I was just watching myself doing this. I'm thinking, okay, who does that? It's probably only me. You know, we all do weird things, don't we? Especially when you have to watch yourself on the monitor. But so it can be like with any style of music making, finding your own voice is a very, very big part, isn't it? And that's why we study. That's why we keep studying, keep learning. I definitely like to think that I'm still learning.
And what are for you the disadvantages or the challenges? Are there times when you're thinking, why do I put myself through playing on a Baroque violin when I could be playing on a modern violin? What
Yes.
those moments be?
Yes, definitely. Well, hot weather, you know, E string going or threatening to go, that kind of slight worry that it might go any minute now. And, you know, especially if you're playing an E major, especially if you're playing the E major partita. And then if you do have to put a new one on right before the concert, it's in a way, it's better if it goes in the concert, because then you have a kind of experience with the audience and they kind of know what you're going through and the whole stress of it. And you can do your little act and go, oh, oops, well, that's never happened to me before. And then you can explain it, and you have a little bit of banter. You say, I'll be back in 1 second, and then you go off and you do your knitting and putting your string on and come back on. And of course, then they kind of can see what's going on. The fact that you have to, so you tell a few jokes, well, not really, but, you know, you talk a bit to the audience and you tune all the time, so to yank it up a bit more. And then you play it, of course, it goes out of tune every 2 seconds. And in a way that's easier and more fun for the audience to see that than if it went right before the concert and you can't really explain that. You can't come on and say, oh, sorry, my string just went. You know, it's not very good to start with an apology, is it? So those are the worst types of experiences, when the string goes right before the concert. It just seems really unfair. And I haven't actually ever thought I'd rather play on a steel string, to be honest, because I don't actually like the sound of steel strings very much.
Yes.
Having said that, I did do a concert with Tapiola Sinfonietta in Finland last, when was it? December time. And because that's a modern outfit, it's modern orchestra, and I don't do many of those kind of things, maybe one project every couple of years or so. And they're very open-minded. They've had a lot of Baroque specialists come in and kind of coach them, and quite a few violinists have come in and done projects with them, and sometimes they put guts E's on. But for this particular project, they didn't put gut E's on, I think because they had to do Shostakovich like the next day or something, and so they were worried about changing their strings because they're not so used to it. So I said, okay, we'll do that, we'll work with that. And so I had my actually I started off on my Baroque violin, and then because I was playing the Bach A minor, I kind of realized, however lightly they play it, I'm just not going to cut it. It's just not going to be heard through this orchestra, even though it was quite a small orchestra. So I ended up, because I had my modern setup violin with me as well, just in case. So on the second day I turned up with that, and of course that projected more. And I did have my gut E on, and for some reason I obviously had a bad batch of gut strings that week, and they kept going. So then the leader of the orchestra very, very kindly gave me one of his steel strings, and it was obviously, I mean, it's a long time since I've been since I played a steel string. You know, we're going back, I don't know what, 27 years or something like that. It's frightening, isn't it? And, you know, I remember it well, but I do remember, you know, it's a very, very different kettle of fish. But what I remember is that you can't really manipulate the depth of the string, you know, as in go into the string with a steel string, because it's not designed to do that. You know, it's designed to shine and project and be brilliant. So I was really surprised. The string that he gave me, you could actually do that. So obviously things have changed. And so there are strings like that where you can actually create quite a warm sound. I mean, it's very different from a gut string, of course, and it was definitely a steel string. But I did find that the things that I was doing naturally, because I was so used to playing on a gut string, like slow bow and messy voce and shapes and things, I tried that on this steel string, and it was kind of, it didn't break, you know, the sound kind of, it went along with me.
Yes. Very interesting.
That was actually really surprising.
Yeah. Yeah.
But sorry, what was your original question?
Just about the challenges of a Baroque violin. Yeah.
Exactly. So there is that, and then of course, yes. So the changes, you know, susceptibility to humidity and changes in temperature. Of course, we all have to live with that. But you kind of you accept it and you go along with it. But those moments when it really flummoxes you, you know, you open your violin case, you've just traveled somewhere and you get to the hotel, you open it up and 2 strings have gone, or things like that, and you've got to rehearsal in 10 minutes, you know, that's annoying.
Yeah. I sometimes
And
think it's miraculous if you think of a period instrument orchestra and you've got the sort of organ on stage going one way, the harpsichord, you know, going another way, the oboes going one way in terms of sharp and flat, and the orchestra and the strings within a violin, you might have, you know, 2 strings going a little bit flat and one going sharp or something. It's kind of miraculous that some kind of tuning system works, because I think most audiences wouldn't be aware of the constant readjustment that's being made within, let's say, a violinist within their 4 strings, and then within a section, and then within a whole orchestra during the course of, I don't know, just 2 hours on stage. It's incredible.
absolutely, yes, there is so much going on, as you say, so much adjusting. I mean, individually, you know, because of strings, you know, we have to tweak them every now and again, and with the wind players, I mean, they have a lot to do all the time, and that's very much part of the training, I think, isn't it? If you think about those things and then think back to how it might have sounded, you know, in the early 18th century, I mean, I think it was quite a different matter. I
Yeah.
don't think there was that kind of ambition to be that refined and so in tune, you know, that's a very kind of 20th century, 21st century, 20th century thing. You know, and it's come really along with the recording business, you know, perfectionism. I don't think that really existed before.
Yes.
Or maybe in a different way. I think perfectionism was in music was about other things. It wasn't about being constantly in tune. If one note was out of tune, oh, let's take that again, you know, it has to be perfect, or slightly untogether. You know, there's been so many amazingly interesting thoughts, I think, about especially in 19th century music quite recently. People are really looking into how they might have actually tried to not play together, you know, how that might have been a virtuous thing, you know, even like in Brahms symphonies.
Wow.
And we know that from the Queen, is it called the Queen's Orchestra, you know, the Elgar Orchestra. I forget the actual name of it now, but the original orchestra that Elgar conducted in the Queen's Hall, wasn't it, I think? And I remember talking to someone who'd studied the original parts, and all the bowings were all different in all the parts.
That's fascinating, isn't it?
Yeah, what does that say about, oh, okay, maybe it doesn't matter if this long slur is someone's on an up or a down, or changes in different places, or, you know, very interesting. So different set of rules. And then if you contrast that to, for instance, the 80 violin in, you know, with Lilly, and their kind of bowing discipline, which was astounding. And then Corelli's orchestra in 1700, where, or around then in Rome, where he seemed to all be about sound production and messa di voce, and you can just see it in the suspensions in his music, how that would work. And apparently he was really keen on everyone doing exactly the same bow shape from records that we have. So lots of different things going on in different centuries, but also differing from person to person, I think.
Yes.
Yeah. Anyway, I veered right away from your question of disadvantages.
Brilliant. Yeah, it's brilliant. Yeah, it must have been a shock to everybody with having Lully coming in with his strict rules of orchestral discipline when I suppose
yes,
probably been considered before then. So yeah.
Exactly. Yeah. Suddenly everyone had to sit up straight, follow the beat,
behave, and play what's written rather than improvising.
Yeah.
Things. Yeah.
That's right. Yeah, exactly. And actually have music in front of you, because so much of the time, I guess, music making just kind of, you wouldn't even get your instrument out. Instruments were just lying around because they didn't live in cases. They were like hanging on the wall, weren't they? Or under your coat, or who knows, just sitting in the corner.
Yeah.
And people might just pick up something and then oh no, I'm going to actually, that fits better on that instrument, I'll try that one instead. So you didn't kind of have your own instrument that was your primary instrument. That kind of started a bit later, didn't it? And also the same with music. You probably didn't get your instrument and then here's my music, I'm going to be playing this now. So music making was much more of a kind of fluent thing. Someone might start with with the ground bass, and then people might have joined in. It might have been more like a jam session.
Yeah.
On the other hand, someone might just have turned up with something that was freshly written when the ink was still wet, and of course we know things like that. Mozart turning up with, here we go, here are your parts. Oh, oops, just smudged it. Oops. Oh, right, just correct that bit. Oh, wrong note.
Yeah. All sounds fun. I'm going to ask you now a technical question.
Okay.
Which is just about the real practical. I mean, obviously everyone has different techniques, but how do you personally just shift from, let's say, third position to fifth position without the fact that you have a shoulder rest and a chin rest? And it might be a separate answer or a separate question. What do you teach your students to learn sort of, freedom in the left hand without the same support structure they'd have with the modern violin?
Right. Okay. So I've got a fiddle right here.
Oh, very good. Thank you.
This is my lovely Italian Baroque violin. So I've got my chamois leather on there. It's basically to protect the violin, actually, and to give a little bit of, because this is all a bit bony along there for most of us, and they probably had frills and things going on, collars. So it's quite good to have something to support that. Okay, shifting. So I'm kind of pretty, well, I kind of go from being fairly free with my neck and not being completely on to then being on. So it depends what I'm playing. If I'm doing chamber music, that is kind of fairly straightforward, mostly first position, maybe goes up a little bit every now and again. You can be fairly free, and it's quite nice to just look around and to have that freedom to look at your, whoever you're playing with, your musicians. And then when I do shift, it's going up is easy because you're basically kind of moving towards, you're not going to lose the instrument, even if you're not fixed like that. Going down, there are various ways of doing it. The way I do it is I actually put my chin on for a very short time, and the shoulder might just come up a tiny bit. I don't think there's anything wrong with that, as long as you are aware of it, and then you immediately relax. So if you always see the shoulders as a kind of coat hanger, so you have them at, or try and be aware of having them very balanced, in a very balanced position, and that'll also help you not getting any aches and pains. And touch wood, I haven't had too many of them. Just touching the table there. And so coming down, shifting from, for instance, somewhere up here, you can see that maybe the shoulders just come up a little bit. I'm going to shift down now. So I go, ooh, and then I immediately release.
So you've got the grip between your chin and your shoulder for that time that you need it, and then you remember to release. Yes.
Exactly. Yes. I think
release is probably the most important bit, is it?
Completely the most important. You've hit the nail on the head. Absolutely. The actual, memory. I mean, technique is all about memory, isn't it? So first of all, recognizing what we need to do, remembering to do it. That's it. We don't actually have to do any more than that. We just have to repeat, and then it becomes second nature. And then you're not thinking about it anymore when you're coming down. You just do it naturally. Of course, the chin off way, which I don't know too much about because I haven't really, I did try it for a while, a couple of weeks. And I did a project when I was a student at the Guildhall in London. I went over to The Hague and did a project with Bill Christie of Rameau Opera. And everyone else was playing chin off, of course, because they were studying with people who were teaching that there, and it was my first experience. There was a kind of sea of chin off violinists, and I thought, okay, I'll do that too. It's quite an experience. I didn't want to stick out. I wanted to be like everyone else. What you do, and so I tried it. And so shifting down was, and Rameau can be quite all over the place, quite lots of acrobatic scales and all sorts of things. So what you're kind of doing different things with your thumb, basically, kind of moving your thumb and then your hand. So you've got this kind of caterpillar thing going on. Going up is but I don't want to talk too much about that because I'm definitely not a specialist in that. Do you play chin off?
No, I did study it in Amsterdam when I was with Lucy Van Daal, and it was good to be. She sort of advised that everybody starts by trying it chin off. So I tried it, and I did that sort of spider movement going down, and it was good to have that option of using the thumb, keeping the thumb behind if you're going up to a position and coming back without having just always using your hand. But as a technique, it didn't suit me to have my head up so high, actually, and I liked the reassurance. Actually, one of the things that I found difficult was if you were playing chin off and then you were to put your chin on, it was this big distance down.
Yeah.
And so for me, I felt like you want to have your chin very close, that if you are putting it on or off, it's only a tiny difference. So
yeah. Yes, it is. I think it's obviously in the end it's a personal choice. Depends a little bit on the music you're playing, don't you find as well? Because I've playing earlier stuff. I mean, it's really, of course, fun to try it down here on your below your shoulder, like they used to do. And there are some amazing players out there who do this very, very well, very regularly, that requires a different kind of discipline. It requires a different technique here, I think.
Yes.
I definitely haven't perfected that at all, but it is fun to try that, especially if you're starting out, I think.
Yes, and likewise for if it's chamber music and you're not going out into high positions, it's lovely having that freedom of not needing to put your chin on, and I love that. Yeah.
And the other thing that changes, of course, is how you use the bow, because of course the distance from your body to where you need to actually find your sounding point is different. Of course, if the violin is lower down, even if it's here or whatever position you're in. So I find that very instructive, actually. Sometimes I feel like I've kind of lost touch with my sound, or I just want more kind of depth in the sound, and sometimes I'll just go down for fun and get a bit of a rusticy farmyard sound with a French violin bow, so rather than the Italian way, which is our kind of normal accepted way. You actually put the thumb underneath like that, and then you play, and it sounds pretty rough. I'll have to warn you, because of course this is all slightly different. The sounding point is slightly different, but it gets you kind of in touch with the nitty-gritty of the lovely gutsy sound. It's fun to try. It kind of reminds of folky stuff. Irish folk tunes, for instance, which would sound really good like that. So that's, I mean, When you're shifting, I mean, when you're playing hard stuff like concertos, you know, anything from Vivaldi onwards, and Tartini and Locatelli and Leclerc, and you've got lots of jumping around and lots of acrobatics to do, then you'll find that you might want to just be a little bit more in touch here and have a little bit more control. There are a lot of players who these days now use a tiny little bit of a chin rest, which we know came in at the beginning of the 19th century. Who knows, maybe people were trying things before then. It does give you a certain amount of security. I don't use one actually. I quite like just having the freedom or stroke insecurity of not having that there. And I play everything like that, Beethoven and.
Oh wow.
Yeah, no, it's probably quite daft. It probably would be much easier to have something there to rely on. But I just love that sense of being really very close to the instrument, and as though it's kind of part of you.
Yes.
Rather than having anything in between you, like a chin rest or a shoulder rest or anything. It just kind of feels like it's part of your body. And I like to see
lighter, isn't it? The instrument itself is so much lighter without all the apparatus. Yeah,
absolutely. Yeah, it really is. Makes a big difference, doesn't it? It really does. But so if I'm playing Bach, solo Bach, or anything that requires you know, acrobatics in the left hand, then I do find that I tend to, yeah, I just need a little bit more security here, especially with double stops and stuff. And I like to use a lot of freedom in the elbow kind of coming round, because of course you've got such a kind of different neck shape, and the whole angle of the neck to the body is so different. But I think what's key is to just be really aware of what you're doing with your shoulder, because you don't want to get into a difficult situation where you get into a habit of kind of tightening this.
Yes.
And then, you know, in order to get some kind of security, which you don't normally, I mean, I've been there, I've done that. You normally notice it afterwards because you suddenly get an ache and you think, oh, okay, right. So
yes.
You need to be more relaxed there. Lie on the floor for 15 minutes. That'll sort you out.
Yeah.
With your knee, look under your head, an Alexander technique. Yeah. So yes, so it does vary. Just coming back to the initial question, what kind of repertoire you're playing, how free you might want to feel. And I think, as we were talking about just earlier, it's, you know, it's very natural to want to kind of fix it. Okay, so where does the violin go? Do I have to hold it right, you know, right above here, kind of above where my left leg is, or am I coming out more? Am I coming out here more? And similarly with how it's positioned, you know, some players you might see players playing more at an angled position, others are very, very flat. It's really good to experiment with a lot of different positions, I think, which can seem confusing and maybe not the right thing, because you just want to know, how does it go? Tell me how it goes and I'll practice that. But, you know, it's good not to be afraid to experiment from kind of on the breastbone to going up and different positions, and always use your ears. Just, you know, how different does that sound? How does that influence the sound? Is it easier to play in a gal, for instance? Is it easier to play with a slow bow? And how does it influence the depth of the sound and things like that?
That's brilliant. Thank you very much. Thank you, Rachel. I think that's part one.
Oh, very cool.
Thank you.